Welcome back again to another episode of Reels Like the First Time. My journey trying to experience all that film has to offer, the good and the bad, all for the very first time. Joining me today to talk about Police Story are two returning guests. You can find them hosting the podcast Two Mediocre White Dudes on Film over on the PLD Projects YouTube page and wherever you get your audio podcasts. You can also find their previous episodes right here discussing The Evil Dead, and the other one talking about his love for Ed Harris and The Abyss. It is, of course, PJ Campbell and Paul DiNuzzo. Hello, gentlemen.
Hi, sorry we ruined the intro for everyone watching as we were like mouth talking. I can't believe we didn't make you laugh the entire time.
Well, that's
I
very
was
impressive.
I was not looking at either of you because I had the tab open for my actual intro in my notes because I knew the two of you were going to be dicks.
Oh,
And so here we are.
wow. Just
Wow,
calling us
yeah.
out right like that.
Yeah, the shade is real.
I mean, she's not wrong,
I mean,
but
she's also not wrong. We were
I'm not
being
wrong.
total assholes about it, but that's not the point.
I absolutely know my audience and I know the people that I brought on this show. And I know that if I even tried to be professional and stared either one of you in the eyeballs, it would not have worked out.
We're
So-
really.
what's that one?
It's almost
Bro.
like she listens to our podcast and knows exactly how we interact together.
Shocking, right?
I know. I can't believe it. There's just something weird about someone actually knowing how we interact and deal with. And it's funny because people at my bar are starting to listen to the show.
Oh no.
And so I've been getting random feedback from people at the bar. And now it's, yeah, your face says it all. And I'm like, oh shit, I forget that we actually are starting to have a reach. And like one of my regulars started saying he wants to be on the show because he says he has words for you about
me?
your for you because of your how you and I see trilogies, and apparently we are wrong about our the way we look at trilogies.
Oh, we are wrong. That's where
Yeah, but I'm throwing it on you. It's much easier.
Oh, gotcha.
Tips, you can have a whole new segment, which is like your news bag or like your mailbag. That's just like tips with PLD and PJ.
I would actually love to do a mailbag section. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah, that'd be
I
really
think that's a great idea.
You should
You're
save
right,
that
And I'll
first.
even kick in 5 cents every time it happens to Allison for the idea.
I
She
love
should
it.
get
I want the
royalties.
royalties because we said it here first. Reels like the first time.
It
So
is
I get to
recorded.
claim that as a royalty.
Sean, edit that out, Sean.
He's not going to. That's too much
Oh
work.
man,
Anyway, well,
we're off to a fantastic start
that's
so far.
completely on track for exactly what we're talking
Oh,
about.
we started?
We
Oh.
started.
I mean, to be fair to anyone who's listening to this at this point, and poor fucking Allison for dealing with us, we have been frequently told by people listening to Two Mediocre White Dudes that they enjoy the fact that it takes us almost half an hour to get to literally anything. They like our banter. So now you're stuck with it
Who
because
are
you
you
invited us
people?
on.
Who are you people? That's what I
It's
wanna
like,
know.
you host a podcast and you love having your friends on, and you had a great time with them on separately. And it was such a great conversation each time. And then I'm like, we should do a crossover and bring Two Mediocre White Dudes on Film onto this podcast. And before I even hit record, I was like, this was the stupidest fucking idea I've ever had in my entire life.
Well,
We
I
could have
mean,
told you that.
honestly, we could have told you that in advance, but we need to get the people what they want, Allison, and
This is all that they
half
want
an
is right
hour of-
here.
This right here is a half an hour of random banter that you did not ask for on your show.
I
But
did
you
not.
were
This
going to
people
get.
can.
You were going to get it.
Oh goodness. I'm so where's Kaiser when you need him, right? Just to jump in and
Don't Look at guy's ego any
don't
more than
invoke-
it's already been
don't
shown.
invoke his name. If we say it 3 times, he shows up like Beetlejuice.
He might
This is
as
what's
well.
gonna happen.
Look, I know that they're making a sequel to Beetlejuice with Michael Keaton, but honestly, Kaiser is Beetlejuice at this point. We might as well have just cast him.
Might as well
Not
just
wrong.
acknowledge it. And for those of you for my tens of listeners watching and or listening who don't know who Kaiser is, you're fine. Promise.
Yeah, This is
You're-
about an
I'm
inside baseball.
envious that you do not know
People
who this
don't
man-
know.
This is about as inside baseball as it gets for
100%.
the non-schmodown aficionados out there.
What the fuck's a
Wow.
schmodown?
What the fuck is that? What is that? Is that some
Oh, that's right. I think we worked on that show once.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
Sean,
that
you can
thing.
edit this out now. This is, it's all,
Nope. This all must stay. This is how it works.
this is how it rolls. Well, welcome back, guys. I am very excited to have you both.
Thank you for having us.
It's awesome. I've always enjoyed our conversations, and when I reached out to you guys, I sent my list over of my newly updated list of like things I wanted to cover, and PLD actually responded with, PJ would love to do Police Story because PJ, you were working. And then I think at
Yep.
midnight I get a message back when someone says Police Story, you say? No.
That about tracks with how well I am at answering text messages these days, because as it turns out, working at a bar, your entire schedule is flipped, and then you're like, wow, I forgot to message people back that messaged me 7 hours ago.
Or
Enough that
48 hours ago, and then starts having really bad imposter syndrome and thinks you're mad at them.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. I felt so bad because Allison texted me and she's like, "Look, if you don't want to talk to me anymore, like, I'm sorry, I don't know what I did." And I was like, it is not like that. I am so sorry, Allison. Like, dude, I left PLD on red like for 4 days one time.
We almost
it was
broke up.
real.
We almost broke up.
We almost canceled 2 Mediocre White Dudes.
It almost
You
became
know
one.
how hard I've
Mediocre White
tried to cancel 2 Mediocre White Dudes? The problem is
For
it's
5 days.
impossible to actually cancel white men, as it turns out. I have tried. It's not working.
Does not work.
You should have left him on red for 5 days then, PJ. I think that might have really broken PLD right there.
Yeah, I tried.
Next
It
time.
would've
Try it.
Yeah,
Just try it.
You guys, PLD would show up to your house if he didn't hear from you within like 7 days. I guarantee it. Like he'd have a flight booked and ready to go.
His wife is already sending him here at this point. Like, and
That's
that's not a
true.
joke. So,
That is
you know,
true.
she's trying to get rid of him. She was
For
like,
her
"Fuck you,
anniversary, she
Yeah.
bought me tickets to go out to see PJ. Okay.
How sweet.
That's right?
Yeah.
That's so nice.
She's saying, please get the fuck out of the house."
I'm okay with that. I'm okay
Go
with
see your friend because I don't want to look at your face anymore.
She's
I
like,
know-
"I'm so
Sounds about right.
tired of trying to like split my love with your fucking husband on the other side of the country. Please go see him."
That's true. She heard about this guy in the bar who wants to talk shit to us. We can do it live in person now. So
Perfect.
Hey, man. All right. Be nice to. I will not say the patron's name because, you know, I would like people to still like us, and I also don't want them
That's
to feel
fair.
threatened.
Do a live show.
I'm
Just gotta do a live show at the bar.
I'll just outdrink him.
Honestly, I wouldn't hate that idea, but also I just assume that chaos would just be worse than normal if we were doing it live in a bar.
Well, I'm about to say
100%.
like that's different than normal. How?
I said worse than
Worse than-
normal.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, worse than when you start, you know, including random patrons and alcohol. I feel like it's gonna go badly.
You know, you
It's
never
why
know
I
until you
literally
try.
don't do a live like YouTube anything on this channel without at least like Sean or Jesse or Chris Anthony Lopez or Scott or anyone that can actually work the controls because I get very overwhelmed.
Fair enough. That's a good point.
That's why I
Yeah.
don't edit any of this. Sean does.
Or
I-
is,
I
I wish
get
I
right
very
now.
overwhelmed.
is Sean out for
Sean is
hire.
not gonna edit any of this tonight.
Sean's editing none of it. I want to see how many times we can drop Sean's name throughout this. whole-
Sean, I might hire you to do some editing for me. You know, if
Go
you're-
right
you're-
ahead. He's for hire. He loves
Okay.
it. He'll do it for really, really free.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm kidding. I don't
That's my favorite price. I'm going to quote that price, Sean. That's what she said. She
He's
said
gonna
so.
edit this part out right here. This is gonna get chopped out.
Also, you hear like my mouth will say free, but like 500,000.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Dub it
exactly
in.
what it is. So anyway, so back into it though. Why is Police Story the one that needed to be covered with the two of you?
I mean, I know for me, you know, not to step all over PLD on all of this, but
No, do it. I'm telling you to.
oh, okay, great. I've always wanted to step on you. Yeah, there you go. There, attaboy.
There.
So, for me, when I look out at like all the things that we could have covered, it was a really great list, but I am such a fucking sucker for the Jackie Chan filmography.
Mhm.
And for me, I grew up watching so many of these movies on like VHS and just loving martial arts films. I think that they're such a specifically different type of filmmaking. I think Hong Kong was doing so many differently wild things for so long. And the importance of this film is not lost on a lot of people who see it. Enough that Criterion took the first two very recently and like
Mhm.
inducted it into the Criterion like bigger channel packages and things like that, and did 4K remasters on the first film. And this movie is like absolutely hysterical. It's action packed. It was so good. Michael Bay ripped it off 20 years later. It proves that Jackie Chan is a comedian, an action star, a director. This is like such a seminal moment, I feel like, in Hong Kong filmmaking. And I think it's the movie that ultimately pushes Jackie Chan over the top into what we know him to be. Like, he was already
Mhm.
doing other things, but there's something about this film coming out in 1985 that just pushed him to being the superstar. And especially nowadays, in the climate of how we are looking at police interactions with the people out in the open and the way we see police forces and things of that nature, this film also has like a strikingly interesting commentary
Mhm.
on the way that police forces are used and the way that people go about trying to put people away and what they like, trying to force heroism on someone who is just trying to do their job. And that has always stood out to me, and I think that that's why I always go back to this. Like, Jackie Chan has a very long filmography, and everyone knows, like, I'm going slowly back through all of them right now. Like, I've been buying all of them. Allison, you and I have been like going back and forth because I know your
Yeah.
husband's been buying a bunch of them too,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
we've been
yeah.
talking about them back and forth. And Police Story and Police Story 2 tend to be the ones that I seem to go back to the most. There's just
Mhm.
something about these two, and we're only talking about the first one tonight, and I have already put in a plea to do 2 and Super Cop and First Strike down the line with
Oh,
all
did you?
3 of us. I
Oh,
have. This is not a joke. I think it
Paul,
is.
you act like you're not part of the group chat
Yeah,
watching
I
all of
don't.
the
yeah,
I'm trying to give you a little bit of drama here.
I
A
love
little
it.
bit of.
Love the sell,
yeah,
Paul, love the
anyway.
sell.
Anyway, so it's just one of those that there's something about it that has always just really stood out to me, and they continue to really stand the test of time in a action scenario, in a comedic slapstick scenario,
Right.
in the way that it actually talks about the real world. Like, there's so much commentary, I feel like, and it just proves once again that Chan is also just like a talented director. And so for that all together, this felt like, for me, the kind of movie I could sit down and just really gush about and kind of take apart and have fun with, especially with you guys, because Paul and I do this weekly. This is like the thing we do, is breaking down movies and pulling them apart and like looking at the pieces and finding things that are really cool. This movie just is so much fucking fun,
Oh
man.
yeah.
Like,
It's
it's
so
so good.
fun. It's so fun. It's so funny too. So like as I was watching it, again, I've mentioned this on the show before too. I have this issue when I'm watching these movies, especially when I'm watching them like with my husband, is I'll start watching it and then from like because we've been together now for like over a decade, from like dating to getting engaged to getting married. So he's shown me like clips of this and that and the other, like here and there throughout our relationship. And as I'm watching the opening of Police Story, I'm sitting there and I go, wait, I go, is this the one that has that whole bus thing? And he just looked at me and goes, can you just watch the movie? Like, can you just watch and we'll get there? Like, tends to be an ongoing thing in my relationship where I try to root, but it was very cool because now I had an understanding of like where it
Context.
came from. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And I think that's super important. I think especially with like what you and Paul do on the aspect of like breaking down these movies and these series, franchises, what have you. In this case, it's taking a franchise, but I get to watch it all for the very first time, which is
Yes.
super fun for me, not having the expanse like knowledge or background with Jackie Chan's Hong Kong career. I'm more familiar with his US career. Like
Well, and
I
most people probably listening are, to be
Mhm.
right.
fair. Like, that's not just you, that's most people, because you know, most don't realize, like, this movie didn't really get released here until well after it had come out in Hong
Mhm.
Kong originally and like
Yeah.
around the world. You could get bootlegs of it, sure, but these movies were like notoriously hard to track down until the late 90s, early 2000s,
Mhm.
Right.
because no one was really releasing them, which is really fucking wild.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Especially considering First Strike came out in like 97, 98, and it is the 4th film in that franchise. And Super Cop came out in like 93, and it was the 3rd film. but they didn't really lean on the fact that,
It
hey,
was a
there's
film.
actually
Right.
2 more
Series.
movies.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I'll be honest with you. Like, I'll cut in with my little story here. The fact that I didn't get into Jackie Chan. I got into Jackie Chan in the '90s when Rumble of the Bronx came out, and when Quentin Tarantino gave him the Lifetime Achievement Award on MTV. That's when I got
Yeah.
introduced to him. I had no idea who the guy was. I was like, Jackie Chan. Quentin Tarantino was like talking about all this great stuff he did and everything. He introduced him. I'm like, this guy seems really affable. I never really heard of him. Rumble of the Bronx came out. I saw that, and then I watched the Super Cop and all the movies. I'm like, wow. I found out later on that they were part of a series. I had no idea they were part of a series until much, much later on. I was like, okay, this is just two random. He's looking like he's playing the same guy, but okay. Didn't really think about it too much. I just had a good time watching him kick ass and be funny, and man, great stuff. But then that's when I did the deep dive and went back to the Hong Kong stuff. And I got to tell you, PJ, I haven't watched a lot of this stuff since like the '90s, early 2000s.
Yeah,
PJ's
I'm
been dragging
aware.
me along. PJ has been kind of talking me all this stuff. I know he's been doing a Jackie Chan watch. I'm kind of like, I have so many things I'm doing right now, like not with podcasts, with like all the other things I'm doing, but I do want to do it myself. So then when he pitched this, I'm like, this makes me watch it. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And now that he's doing he pitches this whole series, is basically because we have two Mediocre White Dudes mapped out for till about 2024. So he wants to sneak this into two Mediocre White Dudes on film. So he's totally using you for this thing.
100%. We'll
And
do
I'm
it
a-
in a
100%.
crossover episode.
You're absolutely right. This is 100% me using my goodwill with Allison to make sure that I can talk about some Jackie Chan movies that we will
I
never
love
be
it.
able to sneak
at this
into our show.
point.
I love it so much. I think that's a great idea. I love the crossover. I love having episodes ahead planned that we can figure out. It's going to be great. I can't wait.
And I'm just gonna
All
say right now, like if we decide like this keeps going well and we're having fun with it, like if we want to do the Armor of God movies, like I'm super here for it. Or if we want to do Project A, like I'm down. Like let's fucking go, man. Like I will talk all the Jackie Chan movies. You give me a chance, I will fucking run with it.
PJ's just gonna take over Reels like the first time for me for like the next 6 months. It's great. So it'll be awesome.
I do what I can.
It's incredible. So Police Story directed by Jackie Chan. So I was trying to do as much research as I could coming into this. This is not his is it his this is the first movie he's directed or
No, it's not the
No.
first
okay.
that he's directed at this
Oh
point.
no. Perfect.
Because if I'm remembering correctly, the timeline wise, and part of this gets weird for me because of the releases here versus the releases other places. I want to
Sure.
say the original Project A comes first,
Okay.
and that's one of his earlier films.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds right.
But this
That
is the
sounds
one
right.
that people start to notice him.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like as a filmmaker, because the thing is that everyone knew who he was, and he had been doing a lot of the kind of period piece, the monk type movies and things like that, where you're doing these more like the Drunken Masters and the
Mm-hmm.
Snake and Eagle Shadow, and he's doing stuff like that. And Fearless Hyena, he's not doing things that are modern day stories a lot.
Mm-hmm.
He's not doing stuff that's pushing him into a place where it's a little darker, it's a little grittier. It's still slapstick, but there's like a bite to it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
this movie gets kind of pushes him to that, if that makes sense.
For sure. Yeah, it looks like so his first film he directed was 1979 in The Fearless Hyena. Then it was The
Yeah.
Young Master, Dragonland, Project A, and then Police Story. That
Yeah.
was one thing I really wanted to touch on too when I sent it to you guys. I was trying not to message too much about it because I wanted to try to have like as off the dome kind of a conversation as possible with it. But the one thing that I noticed, and like don't get me like again, I watched like with the US stuff like Rush Hour. I mean, Jackie Chan is fucking hilarious in Rush Hour.
Yeah.
But like watching him in Police Story, never realized just how good of like a physical comedy actor he is. Like, because in my head, I hear Jackie Chan, I think of like stunts and kicking ass and all of
Right.
those things.
Everyone
I
does.
don't
Yeah.
think of slapstick rolling around in an office picking like Buster Keaton's at like picking up phones and like getting confused. Like it was all hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think to your point, and sorry, Paul, I'll let you go right
You're
after
good.
this. I was just going to say, but I think it's a fair point though, because in the '90s, when the U.S. audience was first introduced to him, they really leaned in on him as the action star. That's why it was Jackie Chan's first strike. That's why it was
Mhm.
Rumble in the Bronx.
Right.
Like, the movies they were putting him in the 90s trying to break him through were these super cop. You were
Right.
putting these
Mhm.
movies out that were sounding bigger than life and pushing the action and the stunts. And I mean, if you remember those trailers, Paul, because I know I do, the way, especially with Rumble in the Bronx, it was like we're basically importing this dude who just does all his own stunts
Yeah.
from Hong Kong, and we're tossing him into a movie, and we want you to love it. And like the
Mhm.
audience is kind of bit, but not really, because they didn't know him.
Right. This is they try to market him like Tom Cruise is marketed now, in a
Right.
way. It's all about how he does his own stunts and how he is amazing and how he risks life and limbs. That's all true. But really, that's only half the story when it comes to Jackie Chan. I mean, but in the '90s, that was like that was what they were selling as the whole story. And if you watched it, you kind of like almost had to discover as you're going, oh, this guy also is pretty funny. This guy's funny as
Mhm.
hell. Like, and he's a great actor, but he's also a great like facial actor. That's the best part about him. He got this really exaggerated facial expressions. It's like this face do stunts during scenes when his bodies are not doing stunts.
Mhm.
Really.
Absolutely. It's like I think you see it like the whole time in the apartment scene with Selena when like he has his buddy come in and try to be this attacker and like the face that he's making the entire time, and then when she figured like he's so good. And not
Yeah.
that he didn't know that he was good, but like watching this, it's just like, oh, he's really fucking
No,
good.
he's really fucking great, and that scene is such a perfect example, to your point, of how comedic he can be, but also kinda, like, badass, because there's action, there's still, like, action to it,
Yeah.
Mhm.
but the
Oh
comedy
yeah.
bits are so good, and I was watching it with someone who had never seen it before,
Mhm.
and
Oh.
so like, we were having the same conversation, and it was kind of like, "Oh my god, look at how cool this is," like, it's a lot funnier than you're anticipating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was kind of fun to watch someone watch it for the first time and see that, because she was like, I was not anticipating so much comedy, and she was like, this is very slapstick and kind of like cheesy in a good way. And I was like, yeah, that's what he built his brand on for a long time. Because if you watch Fearless Hyena or Drunken Master and a lot of those older films, they're the same way. There's a
Mhm.
lot of comedy in those
Mhm.
movies, and people don't really realize, like, he really, really knows how to put his body through comedy in a way that Chaplin and Buster
Right.
Keaton would do, but he's
Mhm.
also just good at delivering lines and just, like, pushing himself to make the character more interesting and seem more, like, oddly vulnerable, but also wrong, like, to your point, then they get back to the apartment, and his girlfriend they have the surprise party for him,
Cake.
and
A lot of
she thinks
cake.
he's cheat
A
yeah,
lot of
a
cake.
lot of cake, but then because he's trying to seem tougher and more
Right.
badass, he starts making all these, "Well, she doesn't love me," or whatever, and, like, "It doesn't matter. I could be with 100 women, and it doesn't matter."
Mhm.
And she's sitting there listening to it because he has no idea that she's there,
Right.
and it's like the delivery of the dialogue is perfect.
It makes
That's
him
how
seem like
good it
a
is.
like
Timing.
an everyday man, right?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of
Right.
what connects it is like, yes, he's this badass who can kick ass and with his martial arts and like the stunts and like all of these insane things that he's doing, but his character is just a goofy cop put
Mhm.
into a situation that he may not have necessarily wanted to be put in. And he also has to deal with like everyday life things. Like you have like those like a regular like comedy movie, like like a burbs, or like you're just put in these situations where it just ends up escalating, and it's done so well mixed in with a big action movie.
Mhm.
Mhm. And, they've talked about in the past that part of when they were putting the movie together, they didn't write it like a typical movie. Like, the set pieces and things were not written in the same way that a lot of the Hollywood ones are done, where we map everything out and you kinda know exactly what it was gonna be. Especially with the action sequences, everything was built around them deciding, "We're gonna use a car in this scene. In this
Mhm.
one, we're gonna use an umbrella. Everything kinda naturally evolved, and that's kind of how a lot of his films feel and work, is that there's a lot of improv happening with specific choreography at the same time, and using things around you to make the movies more interesting and a little more real and a little more grounded, and I think that when you look at so many of the different martial arts actors and movies, if like the Donnie Yen movies and the Jet Li movies and a lot of the bigger like wushu type of filmmaking, there's a very fantastical nature to it, and Chan always seemed to want to move away from that and do
Right.
something a little more real. And I think that that's why his movies continue to stand out and stand the test of time a little bit, and
Well,
it makes it kind of fun.
I love the fact that he uses like he's notorious for even just using everyday items as props
Yes.
during his
Mhm.
fight sequences, especially like we're during everything. Like it's cake, it's ladders, it's like
It's
mall,
an umbrella.
umbrella,
It's
Yeah.
it's a window. It's like
Yeah,
wild.
it's a bus. It's
it's
driving cars down a hill through a little shanty town.
right,
Like,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's
It's a
a mall,
scooter.
it's a lighting fixture from the if with that you're screaming. I think one of my, kind of, like, fast forwarding into my little, like, if it's on Wikipedia, it's true, section, but one of the things that I saw was that when filming that bus scene, they had to switch from a wooden umbrella to a metal one because the wooden one kept slipping off and couldn't get, like, a good
Traction
grip,
or
which then
yeah.
makes me think, how many times did he, like, almost die speeding on a bus trying to make a wooden umbrella
Probably quite
work?
a few. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, we already know the big stone at the end. He almost died at that point.
Yeah.
well,
Uh,
and that's not the first time. Let's
right.
be real. I mean, if you look at Armor of God,
If he doesn't
or
die, if he doesn't almost die in a movie, it's not a Jackie Chan movie. That's what
Right.
it feels like
Right,
to
right.
me.
I mean, and that's why he couldn't get insured over here.
Yeah.
Like, that's
Yeah.
honestly ultimately at the end of the day why whenever he's basically made movies here, they have been highly cut down comparatively to the ones that we're used to with him,
Right.
right? Like,
Mhm.
you look at the Rush Hour movies and they're great, but the stunt work is not the
Nearly the
stunt
same
work
level.
you're used to with him.
Same with
Right.
Now, Rush
Shanghai
Hour 3
Nights and
gets a
Noons.
little bit with the fight sequence at the Eiffel Tower, but for the most part, they're really not pushing him the way that you're used to seeing him
Right.
in a lot of his movies. And
Right.
that's because they saw what he was doing. And it's funny because they still insure Tom Cruise, but for
Right.
some reason, Jackie Chan
Mhm.
was like a no-no.
It's so like you mentioned, like, that last stunt, so, again, back to the if it's on Wikipedia, it's true, which clearly it is true, that
Yeah.
that pole that he's sliding down, the lights that were on and ended up heating up the whole thing super hot. He, like,
Yep.
ended up
He
with, like,
burned himself.
second degree burns on his hand, and he, had a dislocation of his pelvis
Mhm.
upon his landing. Like,
Woo.
Well, I
it's
mean,
insane.
and you watch that scene, and one of the things I've always loved about his movies from Hong Kong in particular is that they love to do on some of the big stunts, they do the replay
I
basically,
was gonna
so
say,
you
like, they
see
like
it
it so
for
much.
And you see him going down,
Every
like, 3 or
yeah.
4
you know what?
times from, like, different angles.
I'm all if you're gonna
Yes.
have a big stunt like that, show it every fucking way you can, pretty much.
Yeah.
Right, and that's what
Absolutely.
I love because, I don't think we take a little bit for granted how much these people put themselves through, and
Yeah.
that was actually the conversation that I was having while, we were watching the movie, was that the team that Chan has around him is
Mhm.
trained so specifically to put themselves through such intensely damaging shit.
Mhm.
Like,
Right.
they are an insane stunt team.
Yeah.
You watch the shantytown sequence, and they are falling hard off of buildings onto things. Like,
Insane.
the fight scenes in the car, they're throwing each other through
Through the
glass
windows and yeah,
and all
absolutely.
sorts of shit. Like, they're pushing each other in
Yeah.
insane ways. And so one of the things that I can appreciate is what Paul is saying. Show me every angle of what you're doing in this because the moment it happens, you're my mind is already blown and I'm not sure I've taken in all the information and you show me a new angle and I go, sure as shit, I didn't take in all the information,
Yeah.
and now you start to see other little pieces and other people's reactions. It's
What
crazy.
Mhm.
what's funny to me about that too, do you think about it? I mean, Tom Cruise does it as well, but Jackie Chan's done it. He's like the first one who really did it. You take a lot of stunts in big movies for granted. You take like a big explosions, big like, oh, it's movie making magic, yada yada yada. You don't realize what these people. This is why I've always been saying we need a category for the Oscars. We've long needed a stunt category for the Oscars
Oh, for sure.
because these people would do like things that we take for granted. 'Cause we watch it. And we watch a popcorn movie, we're like, oh, it's great, it's fun, and I got entertained, but don't really think about it. But then when you get the
Mhm.
chance, like BJ was saying, get that chance to see it again and again, you're kind of like, oh, they really did this. So they actually really did this stunt. Somebody actually got up there. He actually slid down that pole, got the camera angles of him getting shocked, getting 200-degree burns, and even just it's amazing to me when I think of it. I'm glad we get the chance for them to say, "Hey, asshole, watch this again," because we really fucking put ourselves through it to do it.
But see, I almost died, so you're gonna watch it 6 times on repeat from 7 different angles.
Absolutely, that's the way it's
And
got
you're going to like it.
Well, and it's it's funny that you say that. We absolutely need that stunt category. And then you look at what happened in Hong Kong. It won Best Picture at the Hong Kong Film Awards
Right.
and action choreography,
Yeah.
including it got nominations in 6 categories altogether.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Like, they over there embraced and took it in and enjoyed it. And I'll admit, like, the Academy Awards is getting a little more interesting and a little better as the years progress.
Mhm.
It's still not perfect, but
No.
we
Yeah.
still are just really overlooking action movies in, like, the choreography that goes into it.
Well, what you
Right.
mentioned for Jackie Chan specifically, even like in Hong Kong, they actually have what they will like. They actually call it action director. Like some of the directors, like I remember I just watched one of his movies recently.
Well, you know what? You're right, and we kinda have that here, but you know what we call it? Second unit.
Second unit, right? Exact kind of thing. But sometimes it's so like, for example, I remember one of the films that he did. Like it'll actually literally say up they get the not just second unit, like they actually get billed as like directed by Jackie Chan, action direction by Sammo Hung. Like there's a couple movies like that kind of thing. They get that kind of actual. This is who the action director is. Like it's that kind of respect and responsibility to put these things. And I feel like it's warranted, especially for a film like this, and for a film of this nature.
No, 100%, and it's funny because the other thing is you look at that, and the closest I can think of off the top of my head comparatively to that is Civil War. Captain America: Civil War
Yeah.
brought in David Leitch and, oh god, why am I blanking? The gentleman who directed the John Wick films. Good lord.
We've been away from the Schmodown for a while now.
Yeah, I know, that
I'm like, I don't it's not like
Chad Stahelski.
Chad
Chad
Stahelski.
Stahelski.
Yes,
I
thank
got
you.
there. I
Good
got
job,
there.
team.
so
Well,
proud
no,
of
you
you
got the
guys.
first name, I got the second name, and we got there. Or if you've
See,
seen
and
The
this
Matrix,
is why no matter how much shit talking you do with each other, you make such a good team.
This is why we podcast together and why I liked writing with him. I hate admitting out loud that I actually needed his help, but here we are. I mean,
Here we are.
I love
it
that
is what it
son of a
is.
bitch.
But
I'm not gonna lie.
we don't talk enough about the fact that you get guys like that who will like put their egos aside for these guys are directing multi-million-dollar films.
Yeah.
Big franchise pictures, and they decided to come on to Civil War to help the Russo brothers to direct the sequence involving the airport. And that sequence stands out comparative to almost any other Marvel action film for that exact reason.
I mean,
And
Captain America Civil War is probably, I mean, obviously, like, without talking like Endgame and Infinity War, Civil War is probably my favorite MCU movie.
I
all
think
time, like right there.
I think that 20-minute sequence is a big part of why. Like, when you talk about Civil War, you talk about the airport sequence.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Even if Civil War wasn't amongst your favorites, it's like it's in my top 15 Marvel. I like it a lot, but what part I like about it, that sequence.
Just kidding. You know what I just got confused with? Winter Soldier.
Gotcha.
I don't know why I did that. I lied. Not my favorite. Winter Soldier's my favorite.
That's fair.
It's okay. We're taking over this now. It's fine. Don't worry, guys. It's cool.
Don't worry, guys. I got to it this time, so y'all can't yell at me in my comments, even though none of you comment anyway, so it's fine.
I want everyone to leave all the comments today.
We're gonna invent burners just to write all the comments.
Do it just to yell at me. Who's that dumb girl? Should be talking about movies. Oh, what idiot!
That's a pretty good.
They should just really say that about us, right? I mean, but you know why they don't say it about Paul and I? The name really just. I can't tell you how many times I tell people that is our podcast name, and they just look so confused at first, and then they laugh. Like, it's almost disarming to the point that it's uncomfortable.
Like, how could you already like make fun of them? They're already calling themselves mediocre. So like, what more could you do?
Come at me, bro.
Yeah, like, please.
I'm already very self-aware of what I am.
Yeah, like, that was why we did it. Like, honestly, it was a joke. We hadn't named the podcast when we did the first episode.
Right.
We just started recording, and right as we started to hit record, I went, Paul, let's just call it Two Mediocre White Dudes, and it just kind of stuck. Like, it was it was never an intentional thing. That it started as a joke between us, and it kind of fit.
Well, I think
But
yeah, because we
personally,
just
gentlemen, I find both of you slightly above average.
wow.
God, you're
You're
so
welcome.
so
I'll take
sweet.
it. I'll take it. That's the
I
sweetest thing
wish
you
you
ever said
wouldn't
about me.
inflate my ego like that. I'm trying to keep myself,
Grounded,
low.
right?
Yeah.
We're trying to keep mediocre. Otherwise, we might start getting a little too. Our
Never.
podcast might start making
I
more
don't want to be
sense.
average. Yeah, two average white dudes on
No.
film sounds way less
We don't want
interesting
to
than two
sell out.
mediocre
No,
We
dudes.
don't want to
mediocre.
sell
Yeah.
out to the man. Who
Never
wants to do
underestimate the
that?
power of
Fuck
mediocrity.
the man.
After
Damn the man.
Amazing.
Save the empire.
Save the empire. I love it. But I think it's very interesting. So you had mentioned kind of like the idea of like the popcorn flick and the blockbuster and how this movie grossed worldwide total at this point now. It's been 18, it was 18 million, a little over 18 million, almost 19 million worldwide, which is now equivalent to like 50 million, at least in like 2022, almost 51 million. But all of that was overseas
right.
in
Yeah.
Europe and Asia, which I think is insane. Cause like, again, like I think maybe most Americans, or I can't say for everybody, but for me, when I think of Jackie Chan or I think of like a John Yu or John Woo and how he directs movies, or when I think of Donnie Yen or all of these different people, I think of martial arts films,
Yeah.
right? This podcast has opened my eyes up more to the idea of the Hong Kong action, which is not necessarily martial arts. Martial arts
This
is
is what I
is
wanted.
its own thing,
Mhm.
right?
It totally is.
It's completely its own thing. And it took me watching I still have to hopefully eventually record the episode but I watched Hard Boiled for the first time and I got to
Oh
like
yeah,
that
and
was
you were
my
blowing us up
I was
while
like,
you were
what
doing it.
is this? I'm like, this is insane.
That's
But like
true.
that was my first foray really into the idea of Hong Kong action.
Right.
And like when Tony Leung showed up on my screen, I went, oh, there he is. Look at that handsome man. I was like, oh boy. But
Can
it's
we
like,
just talk about the fact that Hollywood is finally giving him his due too? Like, Marvel was so smart
to
putting
you,
him in
oh,
Shang-Chi
absolutely.
because, like, the one thing I'll say, because we're kind of on that conversation, you're right. There's a totally big difference between a martial arts film and like some of the Hong Kong action films because,
Mhm.
like, a lot of those action films they might have martial arts in them, but they're actually more like gung fu movies or
Yes.
Right.
guntada movies, and it's the stuff that the Matrix was like super based off of,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
You look at that, or what was the Equilibrium? That was another one. It was
Yep.
guntada. Like that was a huge thing for that movie. But when you look at what they were doing with Shang-Chi, they looked at all these martial arts films and it was like you have to get Tony Leung because if you're going to make a martial arts film in America that is like a love letter to those movies,
Mhm.
get someone like him. Get those people who are like have been there. I'm
Yeah.
actually almost surprised that Jackie Chan wasn't in the first one
Yeah. Me
because
too.
you were getting right? Like I thought about that a lot. I thought for sure when they announced that movie that he would have been like arguably one of the first people they cast and then they didn't.
Yeah.
So I'm
Right.
hoping that he'll show up in the sequel. We know that they're making one.
Right.
Right.
So like you need those kind of presence. And even I thought that was really smart with Star Wars too, like getting Donnie Yen. They wanted to have a someone who was not a Jedi but a Force user who was skilled in martial arts. Get someone like Donnie Yen, and
Mhm.
then you look at the John Wick movies. The John Wick movies have been very smart with how they place it. And again, Donnie Yen in John Wick 4 was the whole thing.
And the
He's
highlight of
very
the
Can
good at
I
what
film.
he
just
does.
say I had to do the whole thing too because most of the movies I've seen with Donnie Yen in it, he's playing a blind person. So I had to double check and do the Google search, is Donnie Yen blind? And I literally typed into the Google search bar, is Donnie, and it said, yeah, it completed it for me, Yen blind, question mark. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm not the only one.
Well,
Really?
considering how often he's done it, I mean, it's totally
Yeah.
fair. And I love that they have really leaned on that. And I think when you look at the unfortunate side effect of that, though, is that because things like Police Story were so popular,
Mhm.
and they looked at it and they went, "We want to make stuff like that with Jackie Chan in America," but they didn't get why he was so popular.
Right.
And so then they would start to lean on the comedy more,
Mhm.
and then they took away a lot of the grounded action. Like I enjoy the tuxedo. I have a real soft spot for that movie, but it almost defeats the purpose. Like,
Yeah, I agree with
giving
that.
him a super suit is not why he is Jackie Chan. Now, he
And
has
he's
also made his own superhero type movies
right,
since in Hong Kong because that is the shift of the world. But we're talking like 2000s, and then he'd go back to Hong Kong and make New Police Story
right.
or
Mhm.
the third Armor of God film. Like, he was still Jackie Chan,
Right.
and you were leaning on all the wrong things. The only ones that really work, arguably, were Rush Hour and Shanghai Noon.
Mhm.
Like
Which
those two franchises.
I've not seen the Shanghai Noon or Shanghai Nights,
Oh,
so
Dude,
okay.
you know what's funny? Shanghai Nights gets slept on a lot, but that movie has Chan and Donnie Yen fight each other.
oh,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
yeah.
Is Donnie
Yeah.
Yen blind in that one? Can I just get that
No, he's
spoiler
No,
out?
not.
no,
Perfect.
he's not. He's not.
And he's real good, and their fight scene is super cool. Like, it I don't wanna spoil it, you haven't seen it,
No,
but,
it's all
like,
good.
it's such a cool goddamn fight scene,
Yeah,
and you'll lose your mind because it's funny seeing those 2 guys together.
Yeah.
I'm excited. That's awesome. No, I'll definitely guess we gotta put that on the list for, to cover on at some point as well for our Jackie
I love
Chan
this. I
super
love that the
series.
list keeps growing because of us.
I love it. I'm all
Sorry,
for it.
Paul, I'm signing you up for shit you didn't ask for.
Literally, it's gonna be like, I'm gonna, like, pre-record a bunch of things, and then I'm gonna have nothing planned out, and I'm just gonna hit you guys up and be like, "Hey, what are we gonna just gonna talk about this one? Because I need to fill a spot."
So
I
we'll be
love
the
So, it's
backup.
great.
I'm okay. I'm being the professional backup. I like it. It's all good.
Yeah.
I'm
Look,
so
man, I've been the rebound many a times. It's cool. I've never
Yeah.
I really haven't, but it's a good enough joke to actually put out there.
it was a great joke. I appreciate
I
it.
believed it, PJ. I believed it.
I wanted to be a method actor once upon a time, I really dug deep into my soul about
Mm,
that,
I felt it.
Yeah.
Job well
Fantastic.
done. Job well done.
Thanks, buddy.
I love it. Um, Another couple things I kind of picked up just from like reading around, and I would probably maybe even like go to agree with, but the idea that the entire final action sequence in the mall with all the glass shattering, the sugar, all of that is would probably rank, I would think, in most people's top 10 of like action sequences of all time.
It's absolutely up there.
Oh, 100%.
And yeah, and I think that's because again, what were we talking about earlier, right? This
Mhm.
sequence is so wild. He got so hurt doing it. And the thing I think that also pushes it to that, and we haven't really talked about the shift in tone from the
Mhm.
second act of the movie to that third act, because the movie is so funny for the first 2 acts and so, like, it's
Dramatic.
serious, but not really,
It's dramatic.
and then he is pushed to this breaking
Yeah.
point,
I was
and
actually
ch
going to say
like
that. I want to jump in real quick, PJ, on this. This is
yeah,
something I wanted to
yeah,
bring up.
do it.
Mhm.
I love the fact that, like, you talked about how before he was kind of slept on for his comedic stuff. That's why when we first came over to the US, he was the action guy, he was a stunt guy. He kind of got slept on a little bit. I think after that, people discovered his action and his comedy moves. I think they sleep on him as an actual, just dramatic actor. The guy
Mhm.
actually has
100% they do.
absolute chops. And like, it seems like my son came down during one of the most, I think during the, I think it was the scene when he was in the police, the police room. He takes the chief hostage or whatever. He
Mhm.
watched the one sequence and get, dude, this guy's a great actor. I'm like, I know he is. He's fucking Jackie Chan. But like people
Yeah.
gets because he gets so much out of his physical comedy. His physical, you don't see him as anything more than just he's the funny action guy. No, he's
Mhm.
actually got serious chops. And if you'll see later on, watch a movie like The Foreigner much later on, where it's
Yeah.
completely serious and dramatic. And he
Shinjitsu Incident is a great that movie is wild because it is not an action film. It is like a serious drama, and
yeah.
he is
Mhm.
And
great.
he's great in it. He is absolutely great in it. But I digress. Go ahead, PJ, with the action part of that
No,
now.
no,
Go
no.
ahead.
Actually, you're not wrong, right? And that's part of why it works
Yeah.
because people are so disarmed in that moment. Like, it's actually uncomfortable.
Yeah.
The
Mhm.
way that
100%.
when you look at how Chan breaks in the movie, like, it is so uncomfortable, and because he doesn't feel like the character you've come to love to that point,
Right.
because he has been so like, he is the standout hero, and here he is getting totally fucked over in
Right.
everything that has happened to this point, and he realizes, like, how fucked the entire system is after everything he's gone through, and this dude's gonna walk away.
Mhm.
Wow.
And, like, this trial has happened, he is disgraced after he was forced into the limelight when he didn't even wanna be. Like, that's the whole thing about this too, is they forced this limelight on him where that he doesn't wanna be a hero, he's
No.
just trying to do his job. Like, he says it outright when they do this fucking press conference,
Right.
Right.
and then so you get to the end of the movie, and it's such a, like, starkly juxtaposed version of, "Look at what you forced him to become,
Mhm.
and look at what it forced him to become."
Right.
Like, you
Mhm.
forced one thing, and you broke his spirits to the point that he does something fucking unspeakable by going after this guy in public.
Right.
Right.
And almost, spoiler, he almost killed him. He had to be talked down. He's had to be
Yeah,
Mhm.
talked
and
down.
that's why that sequence is so great because it's a starkly dark shift in the tone of the film that pushes a character that you have come to love to his deepest, darkest breaking point.
Yeah.
So when he does what he does, you're actually horrified because not only is that not the kind of thing you're anticipating from him, but now you're seeing what he's doing and it's psychotic.
It's literally like that was in my head too. I was like, "Oh, he at the end, like after he slides down and he gets him, like, oh, he's got the bad guy. He's gonna put him in his cuffs and we're just gonna end the movie," is where my head was going because that's the character that he's built for 3 quarters of this movie, right? Like
Right.
Yeah.
you're going through it, and then now he's sitting there and he is just like just beating him, and I'm just like, oh my god, he actually is going to end up really
Murdering him.
murdering
Yeah.
someone, and it's not what I expected, but I still and it made it so that the ending, it was still a happy ending in the sense that like you got your bad guy, but also felt very unresolved. And I guess like I can't talk more on it because I haven't seen Police Story 2 and I don't know, so I
Yeah.
don't know where that picks up and
Right.
we don't want to go into it. But it really did, like when the film ended, I kind of had one of these, and not in a bad way, but I had one of these, I went, "Oh, that's it? Like that's how
Mm.
we're ending it?"
Well, yeah,
Moments
and I
that
actually
go ahead.
oh, sorry. No, I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize. And I was going to say, you know why that works? Because you are anticipating one thing
Right.
and then it goes such a different direction and when it ends, you're uncomfortable
You are
Yeah.
very
because
uncomfortable.
it's I went and saw Night of the Living Dead at the Loft actually.
Mhm. Oh,
The
it's
other
so funny
night.
that that was last week's episode. That's coming that's coming
Hey, look
up.
at me, synergy,
Wow.
let's bring this all around. But Night of the Living Dead is very similar. That movie's a little bit horrific,
Mhm.
but it's really mostly very campy. Like it's a 60s film, and it takes about the last 2 minutes of that movie to suck the air out of a room, and the
Yeah.
movie ends, and you are like,
What?
"I'm sorry, what?
What just happened?
Yep.
Right.
Like, what just happened?" That's kind of what Police Story does. Like, it's very satisfying, but at the same time, it's almost dark and like it's kind of happy, but not really.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
But
he had to be
and then
talked down for murdering someone.
And he still
right.
beats the hell out of them. And the
Right.
Yeah.
very last
And then
frame is them holding him back for doing more.
now that I know, and at least knowing, like I know there's a Police Story too, so I
Mhm.
know there's a
Yeah.
continuation in the story,
Right.
so it makes me want to go and watch, so I can be like, the fuck happened after this, like
Right.
where are we picking up, how is this going, because it really is like you to watch someone reach their breaking point, because I think the one thing that they do so well in the storytelling is talking about how much of a stand-up officer
Mm.
Right.
Right.
he is,
Yeah.
and
They put him as
you
the face.
Mm.
right, exactly, and I think it was interesting too is while he's having that breaking point where they're charging him with murder of another officer, all of those ads are playing as this is going
Mhm.
on, like, so you already have this thing that he didn't wanna do, and now he's doing it, but n the ads haven't started playing, but now that he's not being seen as a stand-up guy and it starts losing his mind, you're specifically seeing these ads that are
Mhm.
going through and going on, and he has to watch these, and I think that was just such, whether that was how they meant for it to be done, I think that choice of making sure we saw what he did in the beginning as this face to having to watch it now while he's at his at this breaking point,
Right.
I thought was such a smart choice to do.
Agreed. I
No,
like it.
it totally is. And it's the thing we were talking about, right?
Subverts
There's a very
expectations.
specific social commentary to it, I feel
Mhm.
like. And that's very interesting to me. And I'll even say, like, the ending of this movie is almost really ghastly. in
Mhm.
a modern context.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah,
And seeing someone going as far as they go, because this is a very specifically hot topic issue
right.
in
Mhm.
this country and across the world now, because you're seeing it happen all the time where
Mhm.
people are in police forces that are taking matters into their own hands and things go absolutely too far.
Yeah.
And so that is so interesting that they push that sort of narrative because it's a thing we see all the time.
It's kind
Mhm.
of funny, especially because, like I said, like it's the 1980s, so it was a much different
Yeah.
time. But like, so a line that back in the 80s, and not just Hong Kong, in the 80s in general would have been, it's absolutely fine. Like they have Uncle Bill and the chief of police there. They said like, "Well, you're gonna help me write this report. I didn't see anything." And like
Mhm.
it was a big jokey line, and back then
Mhm.
that's what it was. Nowadays it is a little darker, means something a little different in a way. You can't kind of get away with that as much as like as a humor side of it. I still
Right.
laughed because I grew up in the 80s, and that's like I knew what the intent was. But if you try to look at it in a different context, it's like, oh, okay, this is an interesting look back from 2023 back on 1985, 86, whatever it was.
I mean, and honestly, like you until you said that, I hadn't really thought about that because I took the line in as comedic as well, and I had what, but it was probably because of what I just witnessed
Right.
leading up to it, and having how heavy it is to then have this delivery being a comedic delivery. You can
Mhm.
kind of have that uncomfortable
Yeah.
kind of like
Right.
laugh moment watching it, so that you're ending on a bit of a lighter note.
Right.
But it really making that comparison though with how that would hit today makes even more sense.
Yeah.
Right.
And I never would have thought about that until this conversation right now.
Yeah, and it's funny, I just think the movie continues to age well, and that's why I
Mhm.
think when you see people like Criterion picking it up, there's a very specific reason. It's not just the stunt work, it's
Right.
not just
Mhm.
what it is, because this is arguably in the top 10 action comedies of all time.
Arguably, yeah.
There's no world where it's not, because you
Agree.
have the Buster Keaton feel to it with so much madcap comedy mixed with some like thrilling action sequences. I mean, that car fight is just spectacular.
Oh,
Insane.
oh
It's
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like the car sequence is incredible. Like the opening of the film is so good that Michael Bay ripped it off 20 years later for Bad Boys 2. Like, I
Mhm.
mean, he didn't even hide it. It
Nope.
is just the
Flat
Right.
same
out ripped it
scene.
off. Yep.
He just flat out ripped it off because it was that good. Jackie Chan is such a good director. Michael fucking Bay was like, I have to do that.
Yep.
Mhm.
Like that's crazy to me.
Mhm.
And you think about that, but I think that when you look at Criterion, they also pick up stuff like Night of the Living Dead. These
Mhm.
movies that have very specific social commentary in a modern era that
Mhm.
even though they were written at a specific time, they age very specifically because things are not being treated the way they
Right.
should. They are not handled the way they should, and these films need to be preserved because they're also pushing you to see things
Mhm.
that are ghastly and
Right.
bad. Like, again, to the point of the Night of the Living Dead, like, you look at it and those cops very clearly know that he is a survivor,
Right.
Mhm.
but they're white men in the South, and they see a black man, and why not just kill him?
Right.
100%.
Like,
Absolutely.
s
Yeah.
it's it's awful, and you're just so it's appalling. And
Mhm.
so this movie does it's not I wouldn't say it's, like, the same level of that, but to have a cop who goes so far off the rails that he is, like, has to be held back from murdering someone, even
Mhm.
if the dude is a drug kingpin who deserves it and continues to get away with all his crimes because, he was set up.
Right.
Mhm.
Like, Chan gets set up by all of this, but good lord, man, like, you watch it happen and it's like, God, that is the stuff we're dealing with.
Right.
Mhm. Absolutely. Oh, 100%. And I think kind of again with Criterion and when they choose to release things and the type of releases that they
Yeah.
get, they're not dummies.
No,
That's for sure.
absolutely not.
I mean, they're definitely not. Um, kind of going more into like your love of Jackie Chan. If you had to give, and I didn't tell you guys ahead of time,
Ooh.
so you're welcome for this.
Uh,
But
this is just mean. I
You're going
gotta
first,
go.
DJ. You're going first.
No, I'm forcing you first, motherfucker.
um If you had to give, because we love top 3 lists on Reels Like the First Time. If
Oh,
you had
jeez.
to say, I will make it so it does not have to be ranked,
Okay.
but your top 3 Jackie Chan movies, what would
Oof.
they
I know
be?
what I do know what my number one is, and this
Okay.
is like this is a very specific one for me, and I think that this is one that has over time become many people's like quintessential Jackie Chan movie. If you watch his filmography and you really dive deep into it,
Mhm.
Drunken Master 2 is the ultimate Jackie Chan film of comedy, drama, action, adventure. It is so badass. It
Yeah.
is so fun. It is so insane. The fight sequences are remarkable. Like the stuff he puts his body through in that movie, it makes me hurt watching it. But
Yeah.
the last fight sequence is 20 minutes and it includes him
Wild.
on coal, like barefoot on his hands on coal. It is
Wild.
a spectacular film. And I think it also, because he made so many period type pieces, it's a period film too, but it has a little bit of a modern edge to it, which makes it
Mhm.
kind of interesting. That movie is great, and I know that here it was released as Legend of Drunken Master, so I'm sure a lot of people have seen it
Right.
under that title,
That's when I
Mhm.
first saw
but
that.
it fucking rips, man. Like that movie is just spectacular. Police Story would also be in that list. Like I said, I think when you talk about these films, there's a reason we keep going back to it. Like it
Mhm.
just stands the test of time. It's spectacularly directed. It's super fun. It's just a goddamn good movie.
Mhm.
Like it just is.
Absolutely.
Now, my wild card is one I don't think that people are gonna really anticipate or expect, and I might even get pushback on people who say this, and they don't, and they're gonna be like, "Wait, really?" But he made a film that came out in what year? 89. So a couple years after this, and it was this really spectacular film called The Cantonese Godfather. It was called Miracles Here. It
Mhm.
Right.
is a
Right.
remake of Lady for a Day and Pocket Full of Miracles, 2 movies that I adore greatly by Frank Capra. Jackie Chan
Okay.
decided to remake it himself, and it's a very fun, kinda slapsticky film that has a lot of really great action, and it's got a big heart. It's more of a rom-com,
Yeah.
and it's
Okay.
really, really fun and sweet and cool, and there's a bunch of the, people that you're gonna recognize, of course, because he used so many of the same actors so frequently, but it's kind of like a very different type of period piece for him. He's never quite made anything like that since. Him becoming, like, a crime lord by mistake because he tries to attempt to save a crime lord. It's very fun. And very
Okay.
cool and very different, and there's some spectacular set pieces in it.
All right. Let's see, all these that I have to add to the list to watch. So,
Yeah.
All right.
Paul, it's your turn. You've had
Uh,
all this time.
I know. I know.
PJ extended as much as he could for you.
He
I
did.
really
He
did.
bought me some time. He bought me some time. I'll give him credit where credit's due there. Well, I actually would actually agree with Drunken Master 2. That was actually the first one I was thinking of in my head because that's one of the that last action sequence is one of my favorites of all time by far.
I'm really glad to see that you finally, became a sophisticated individual in the last 30 seconds.
Yeah, you know what? You can go fuck yourself. Anyway, I like the. No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Absolutely. I mean, I do love what you have to say there about that. I actually do like Miracles as well. I wouldn't put it in my top listing there, but I do appreciate your thoughts there. For
Thank you.
me, I do have this is complete nostalgia based, but I always have a soft spot for Rumble in the Bronx because that was the first Jackie Chan movie I ever saw.
So good.
And so, like when I got
So good.
introduced to that world and that performance and that actor, it stuck with me throughout everything. And it's a solid piece of work. I was just amazed by this is where like talking about using the everyday effects, like the refrigerator. That whole sequence, not even at the end, it's the middle with the refrigerator and the junkyard sequence they have there in the middle, the shopping cart, everything about it, just so many things. Like, what the hell is going on? I don't even know what's going on here. I had never seen anything like that before because I'd never seen anything Hong Kong based at all. So this was all sort of new world to me. So at the same time, it might be a little bit a basic bitch kind of move to pull that one out there,
No,
but it's
no,
my
no.
first one.
No.
I think that's a great choice, to
My
be
first one.
honest, because it is as your first time,
Yeah.
you kind of remember it. And I'm gonna be honest, great set pieces. It's super fun. Like that's a good movie.
It is a
Plus, the
solid.
hovercraft sequence is super dope.
Yes, that's the first time seeing the bloopers afterwards. I kind of like never really saw them do that in movies before. I don't think before that was like, oh, this is the coolest thing behind the scenes at this point. Having fun with that as well. For the third one, I mean, there's a bunch I could go with. I mean, because I love the original Drunken Master as well. I actually do love that
I
one.
mean,
It's a
Fearless
classic.
Hyena is great.
Fearless Hyenas is
Like,
up there. Go with.
I tried to stay away from some of the biggest titles.
I am too. It's why I'm like, I want to say Armor of God, but I don't want to go any of those because those were such
I avoided those for that exact reason.
Like we all know those are good. So what's the real good ones? Fuck, I'll throw. I love them in the Cannonball Run too. How about that?
Oh, you bitch! Come on.
I'm kidding.
I was gonna say, I was like, you don't do that. I mean, like, there's plenty that I can think of. Like Dragons Forever. What a movie. Wheels on Meals.
Forever.
What a movie.
I think I'd go with. I honestly think I'd probably go with The Young Master. The Young Master.
Oh, what a good choice. All right. I'll give you that one.
That one's one of the ones that first really brought me, like when I went back and started watching the Hong Kong, I went in Drunken Master first, and then the Young Master is probably the second one I want to say. But I loved him being in there with Yun Biao. That's what I say his name.
Mm-hmm.
It is. I love that. I'm always horrible with the name pronunciations. I love their camaraderie between each other. The action sequence at the end there with Cam and Dragon. Such a powerful sequence overall. It's not well known as comparatively, I don't think, as far as some of these other ones go. But I really like the young, long-haired Jackie Chan get his game on, so to speak.
That's awesome. Great. The whole reason I asked for this is I want to see which ones I'm going to watch next. So, thank you.
Okay, well, so here's the problem. That's a very different question.
Yeah, that's true.
And I didn't want to be here for 2 hours tonight. So.
No, but you know what I'll say? Like,
you know what? There is one reason to watch The Young Master, and because you get to hear Jackie Chan singing kung fu fighting at the end there.
I love that. I love that so much.
I'll say this though, if you really want to know like this rabbit hole that you can go down, there's so many of these that are great, but you got to look at someone like The Snake in the Eel Shadows. You've got to look at The Young Master. Like he's totally right. Fearless Hyena, but you also have to watch like Project A. Because Project A was specifically like that Buster Keaton slapstick adventure film. It's a period piece. Sammo Hung is in it. You need to watch like I said, Wheels on Meals is very specifically one you should watch. The Armor of God films. Heart of Dragon is excellent. Dragons Forever is excellent. Like
we have Dragons Forever, so that one will definitely be watched and covered at some point for sure.
You know what I throw out there, because it was like one of the first times you really got into that like slapstick stuff. I feel like Half a Loaf of Kung Fu.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Half a Loaf of Kung Fu is great. Mr. Nice Guy, which is actually directed by Sammo Hung.
That's right.
Is really quite good. And if your husband doesn't have that yet, there's Warner Archive did a great release of that a couple of years ago that actually has the international cut restored in 4K, which then had never been done before.
Oh, very cool.
Which was like a big deal. There's, it just kind of depends on what you're looking for. But like even Gorgeous is really good. That's another one that was much more of a rom-com for him.
I forgot about that one.
Most people do because it's so atypical for the things that he does. Allison, I might end up making
in that too. Tony Leung is in that.
You're just gonna make me a list. I love that, PJ. Thank you for this.
Yeah,
it's like but I can just message you and be like, PJ, which one do you want to talk about next? Because I have a gap and
I've been having so much fun revisiting them lately because it's been a little while since I had sat down with any of like the more old school obscure stuff. And like I told you, like Police Story is arguably outside of like Drunken Master 2 and the Operation Condor movies, those are the ones that I would always go back to.
Yeah.
So to go back to some of these ones that I've always loved them, but I'm reminded how talented he was from the 70s on. Like he was making great movies that we kind of sleep on. And I almost think that we're doing a disservice to his filmography when, I love Super Cop. I love Rumble in the Bronx. I
Right.
love a lot of those movies, but like, let's talk about Dragons Forever.
Right.
Let's
Yeah.
talk about those type of movies because they're getting lost.
Absolutely.
Well, I think you have to give someone like Jackie Chan the flowers that he deserves. Like I feel like without Jackie Chan doing his own stunts in Hollywood, we don't have the Tom Cruises jumping out of the airplanes or in the stratosphere. I feel like he like there's not
Oh, absolutely.
there's so many we don't have without Hong Kong action. I feel like we don't have the John Wicks and what that draws from it because
Oh,
I
a
think that's
thousand
one thing that
percent.
I've really loved being able to go back and watch these movies, whether having a podcast or not. But one thing that I've been able to do and really opened my eyes by watching all these different movies and these different genres that I have never given the time of day to or appreciated is I'm now seeing all the pulls in American films and in Hollywood that pulls from these things like the hard boiled and the police stories and all of that and the effect that it has now and it makes me I feel like I appreciate that even more.
Well, and that's
Yeah.
why I love that because it's the reason I push so much of the Hong Kong cinema these days to people who like love action movies but don't really realize how much we've started borrowing from other countries
Mhm.
Mhm.
like movie making,
Right.
and then it gets like lost in time, and then people go back and they're like, yeah, but because John Wick 3, like, very specifically, and I love John Wick 3, like, this is not a dig, but it very specifically borrows from a movie called Villainess that is
Mhm.
Mhm.
super great that came out in Hong Kong a couple years before. The motorcycle sequence in that movie is very specifically modeled after the sequence in that movie.
Mhm.
And then people go back and watch that one and they're like, "It's fine," but, like, the John Wick one and I'm like, "No, you have to, like, understand, like,
This came first.
that movie's fight sequence did it first, and it is fucking awesome."
Right.
Right. And
Like,
there's technically not this scene without I mean there could have been, but since you can tell the inspirations being brought from it and trying to at least have that appreciation. It's like now I might go back and watch Bad Boys 2 just to watch the opening scene again to see it be ripped off from Police
yeah,
Story because
Right.
I've seen Bad Boys 2 at this point, and it's been a very long time because all I remember is the gratuitous building exploding that Michael Bay just
Well, of
loves
course.
to do. But that's gonna be hearing that from here, it's gonna be interesting to go back and watch it and compare to what they were doing in
Right.
Police Story.
Well, the greatest thing about we live in a golden age of media as far as things. I know we can talk about the streaming wars and things going to take off services and everything else, but we have
Fuck
more
Netflix and
access.
their stupid fucking no password sharing bullshit.
We
You heard
have
it here.
we have more access to these films than we ever had before. Back in the 80s,
Mhm,
we were like, you had to go to the mom and pop shop who might have imported a few VHSs from Hong Kong kind of thing. Or like you
or
might get a DVD from a
your
mailing
point.
service or something. Now we have access to these things. So we can
mhm.
really find these and get these comparisons and watch how the evolution of these cinema things happen. It's wonderful to have
You
this time.
It totally is because I remember even in the 90s, like, if I wanted to get a hold of a lot of this stuff, like, you'd have to go to, like, a Suncoast,
Yeah.
and
Mhm,
it had to be almost special ordered because their martial arts import section was just shockingly tiny
Right.
because they weren't really getting that stuff, so you'd have to special order it, and then a lot of the time, because the distributors were so confused about the movies, you'd end up with the wrong movie without realizing it. Like, I can't tell you how many times it took us to get a hold of the second the Honor of God movies were released out of order
Yep.
mhm.
because Americans are fucking stupid. We
Yes.
the Weinsteins fucked up the entire release because no shock, they're fucking terrible.
Yeah.
So I digress. So every time I tried to get a hold of Armor of God, they would always send me a copy of Operation Condor, and I was like, "No, I
Oh,
am trying to get a hold of
the
Armor of
armor of
God,
God. Right.
Oh my
like not
gosh.
Operation Condor 2 that you guys for some reason called Operation Condor here. I want Armor of God,
Right.
like
Mhm,
that's it." But they kept sending me the wrong one, and it was so frustrating because it was like, "No, that is not what I am looking for. Like this is not that hard." But it was. It
Right.
was very hard to find a lot of this stuff.
mhm.
And
100%.
it's it's wild to me to bring this like really full circle. This film did not get a release in America on the big screen until 2019.
That's
It
so
took this
wild.
movie,
Yeah.
yeah, it took this movie 25 years
To
almost
get a limited
to get
release.
a proper limited release in America.
And only
That
make
doesn't
because
make
it was
any
a
sense.
limited release, I think it only ended up grossing according to Wikipedia, it's true. Because of how they did the limited 2019 release, it only grossed like 113,000.
Oof.
And, partially that is also because everyone at this point who is going to go see it is only doing it because it's on in theaters,
On
but
a big
most other
screen.
people are
Right.
Yeah.
right. Everyone else is like, "Well, I can just watch it at home."
Right.
Right.
Like, re-releases do not always work.
No.
And
Mhm.
because Chan's star honestly is waned a lot in America.
Mhm.
That's not a
Unfortunately,
dig.
yeah.
It's just
No, it's
true.
true. It's true.
I mean, because he's when you look at it, yeah, because it's he's gotten older. His stunts aren't going to be they're not going to hit the same as like what other people might be doing. And I think it's unfortunate because I think and again, I mean, I'm probably one too that like I'm pretty sure the first movie I ever actually watched all the way through that had Jackie Chan in it was when like Rush Hour came out in theaters.
Yeah.
And I went and saw that. Like that was honestly like I'm sitting here thinking about it and looking through his filmography and I'm pretty sure that was the first thing I've ever seen him in, but I knew who he was. I
Mm.
knew what he had done. I'd watched him in interviews. Like I knew who Jackie Chan was, but for me until now, I wouldn't have been the target audience to go see that re-release or to deep dive into things the way I'm trying to do now.
Makes sense.
And I'll say this, like, I still watch all of the stuff he puts out from Hong Kong. I'm like very excited for his new one called Ride On. It's gotten very interesting reviews. It looks a little bit like his version of like Cry Macho that Clint Eastwood
Yeah.
was doing. It's like very self-reflective of his career and it
Yeah.
seems very good. But like he's been making movies still mostly. He went back to Hong Kong
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
he was just not being offered anything over here that was really worth his time.
Yeah, the
Like,
Foreigner, get the Foreigner, but it tanked. It really tanked. It was unfortunate because it was actually a very interesting film with him and Pierce Brosnan together. But then, yeah, after that, he pretty much went back at that point.
I mean,
This
and that was 2017.
Yeah,
this man has been in 100 so it's according to IMDb, he's been in 139 movies with 8 potentially rumored or in development films like in development for 2024's new Police Story 2.
right.
Yeah.
It's so
That's
like
talked about
the
forever.
literally you're talking about possibly 147 movies. That's fucking insane. That
Mhm.
is an insane career. Why wouldn't you go back to the place where if you're not being celebrated here in the way that you should be, I would absolutely go back to where the people are going to love me and I can do what I want to do, what I love to do and have fun doing it.
Well, it's very interesting too because now it does look like he is coming back to America because he's actually doing the sequel to The Karate Kid, which was one of the better dramatic works that he got to do. It was the one time they gave him something to do.
Right.
Right.
He was definitively the best thing by far about that movie. I'm not a big
Oh,
fan of the 2010 Karate Kid. I'm not a big fan of it at all. But I was a big fan of him in it. He did wonderfully in it. You get a chance. I mean, a bunch of whatever you can call it a cash grab. Rush Hour 4 could bring him back into the limelight a little bit too, which would be at least we're
Sure.
talking about him. Also,
Right.
he's voicing Splinter in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie coming out as well. So maybe
he's been doing a lot of voiceover work because he also did what was it? Obviously the
Kung
3
Fu
Kung Fu Panda
Pandas,
films,
Mhm.
and they're now doing a 4th one of those, so you can just assume he's going to be doing that. He was in
Nut Job,
Lego Ninjago.
Nut Job 2.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Well,
for
yeah.
whatever reason.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
remember.
but now he's doing a new police story actually,
Yeah.
which is very interesting. He hasn't done a police story in a bit. I'm gonna be
2005?
honest, I wasn't super crazy about New Police Story, so I'm very curious how New Police Story 2 is gonna turn out. But
It was
I will
fine. It was fine. Yeah.
I appreciate that with both New Police Story 2, and Police Story 2013, that he was going for something a little more dramatic,
Right.
Mhm.
and I can appreciate that. But it's the same way I feel about things like Evil Dead 2013.
Okay.
Sometimes when you go a little too far the other direction, you start to miss a little bit of what makes the magic of what I love about you go away.
Mhm.
I get that. I
Um,
get that.
and I think that New Police Story was the better of the 2 Police Story films he's done in the last 20 years.
Right.
It has a great fight sequence in a Lego store. I will give it that. And you guys know how much I love Lego. So, there's that.
Yeah.
But I'm not like that is not the one that I would have of all the things he decided to go back to, that would not have been
The choice.
the one. Yeah, that wouldn't have been my choice. Like, honestly, I would have rather a legacy sequel to First Strike.
Mhm.
Ooh, yeah, that would have been kind of cool. I could have seen that.
And
Some of
just
her
to see
smiling and nodding like, "Yeah, I've seen it, so I totally 100% agree with you."
well, so First Strike is the 4th film in this franchise.
Right.
So it would
Gotcha.
basically be a legacy
The
sequel with
same.
this character.
Right. It's this character's
versus
first story versus.
because
Gotcha.
to make things complicated for you, Allison, and really break your brain, New Police
Oh,
Story
no.
has nothing to do with the first one.
Right.
It is
Fuck.
a
It's a
in-name
reboot.
only
Yeah.
reboot.
Oh.
And it's good, and he's decent, or it's decent, he's good in it.
And if I remember correctly, I could be wrong, PJ. Correct me, because I didn't actually see the 2013 one. Wasn't that also like a totally different as well? Completely.
Yes,
like,
and that's what I
to-
was going to say. And then Police Story
I haven't
2013
seen that one.
is
So
also a totally different film.
right.
Perfect.
So, like, he
Love that.
continued. He was trying to push it as like he wanted to start telling new stories with characters like that, and I love that. But the problem is that again, you're kind of changing the DNA, and if you change the
Mhm.
DNA too far, now you're losing something in it.
Right.
I would have been much more interested to catch up with the character we haven't seen in almost 30 years versus a character that I barely remember from 20 years.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good call. I agree with that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so it is what it is, but we'll see.
Yeah. So now I think is a great time where, Paul, I'm going to start with you on this one. But
Okay.
I want your top 3 in any order scenes from Police Story.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I'm going to do all 3. We're going to do back and forth. Right. Just going to do all 3.
Just go all 3.
All right.
Because I feel like we're still going to interrupt you anyway.
That's true.
And we're going to be here probably for another hour.
right.
So
So I
And he
have.
deserves to be interrupted. Let's be honest. I mean, does anyone really
Shut
want to hear
the
from
fuck up. No.
You shut your mouth.
you.
Fuck you.
We're
We're way too
bringing
in sync 95% of the time.
Knife-
For those who
knife-
don't know, that is us reenacting Randy from
From
Scream
Scream
2.
it's great. It's fantastic.
90% of the time we're on the same page. 100% of the time. So okay. Anyway, my first one I like.
Brian, I'm going to be honest with you. That doesn't make sense.
That doesn't add
It,
up.
it smells
I
like
don't
pure
do math.
gasoline.
No.
Love this. Love this so much.
All right. My first favorite
All right.
part, actually, it's a small part as part of a bigger sequence. But during the whole sequence where he's got the girlfriend coming over and hearing everything, the girlfriend hears everything he says and she slams a cake in his face and she runs out the door. She gets on this like little scooter and then he just grabs her from the scooter and she flies off of it. She gets back on the scooter and he just lifts up the scooter. It's just
And then he lets it go and she just goes,
I hate you.
Oh, it's such great comedy.
Great physical comedy. It's not action sequence. It's a great physical comedy. And it's because he has the timing and she works wonderfully splendid in the scene, but it's all about his timing and how he just does it so magically, so perfectly. I laugh. I rewind that to watch that scene every time I watch this movie.
That's a good one.
Dude, Maggie Cheung is great.
Underrated.
We have,
really underrated.
like, we really didn't talk about her, but like she is spectacular. Her chemistry with Chan is so good in these.
Awesome.
And same obviously with Brigitte Lin.
Yes.
Selena. Like they're both very good in this, and that is a very specific like. Those characters are really fun, and they just work in such a specific way around him that is just hard to top.
Yeah.
And it's like sequences like that. It's sequences like the setting him up to sound like he's been sleeping with her while he's while he's recording it. That stuff works in such a great way, and they sell it. It's just so well done.
It is.
Absolutely.
I love it so much.
It's amazing.
What else was I tried to like? I did want to again. I want to. Everybody could talk about the last sequences, right? Obviously, the last action sequences as part of it. But I was trying to go away from that because that was what everybody was going to say. So I want to try to give you. I did my top 3 away from that when I thought about it.
Gotcha. I think that's fair because I think everyone knows that final scene is just
unbelievable,
ingrained in everyone's minds, like one of the greatest action sequences of all time. It should be on everybody's
Fuck all
list.
of you. I'm putting it on there anyway.
Well, good. I'm going to talk about it. I know the reason I'll let you have the one. One of my other favorite lines is actually completely no action involved. I loved the sequence in the courtroom where Jackie Chan's on the stand, and then they play the tape recording, and it's the recording that like
so funny.
It's the recording of him talking about.
He's like, she sat on a cactus. It's a cactus.
Yeah,
it gets like more and more. It gets worse and worse. Things are being said, and did you realize it? And you have the judge laughing at it, the criminal of course is laughing at it, and Jackie Chan getting more and more intensely insane. It's a great combination of what we see is that Jackie Chan's physical comedy, as far as like his facial expressions, his intensity, and when he comes later on, when he taps into that really dark side later on. This is that groundwork there. I always thought that was a good moment for this.
Absolutely.
No, and it also gives him a chance to be a little dramatic too.
Right.
Like it's a little bit of an intense sequences that within too. Like that's a good scene.
It is,
and Chan's great. Like the comedy's great.
Yeah.
Everything about it is fun. The drama is good, and it really pushes the story in a great way. Like this movie is actually wickedly well paced. We didn't really talk about that, but this thing's kind of a rocket.
Yeah,
it is. And I think that's another good point to bring up, like with him being like that dramatic. Because again, these are the times where we're starting to see him as this face, and these advertisements are popping up, and the videos are coming up, and this is what he has this ad, and then this is what people are hearing in a courtroom, including his girlfriend.
Right.
And it does not match with this whole "you're the face of our department."
Worse and worse.
Yes.
So for my final piece, I will go back to being basic. I'll let you have the basic action sequence at the end there. I want to go the basic Buster Poindexter phone sequence. That's the first
I had
time.
that on my list.
I mean, it's a great sequence.
Him
What's
handling
good.
it so much, and I think part of it to me is like, I get it's from the '80s. It's like how crass some of the stuff is. Like it's one of the things we could never get away with in a movie like today. Like,
No.
oh, you just got raped? Okay, hold on. It's like random stuff. You're just like,
how long ago did it happen? A year? Why are you calling me now? Like, yeah.
As a dispatcher, I got a lot of love for that sequence actually right there.
Of course.
Policeman, a police guy learning what a dispatcher does. Learn, mister.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, absolutely. That's awesome. All right. I loved that scene. That was actually on my list too, that whole sequence. Then at the very end when he goes and he just unplugs them all and then hangs them up on the right or no, he puts them all back and then just takes them off the phone so no one can, or when he thinks he's talking to the one woman, but he's actually talking to May about her mom. And she's like, you tell your mother to go to the
Every
Fantastic.
dispatcher's dream is to unplug all the phones and just sit back.
Yes.
I'm shocked you haven't done more of that, to be honest.
Because I can't. Tape line. Okay.
All right, PJ, you're up.
All right. I mean, I'm just going to start with what is arguably and easily the best sequence in the movie. It's the finale.
Yeah, of course.
And that's just, and I don't want, it's not even about being basic. It's just, it's such spectacular craftsmanship, top to bottom. I think that everything about it, when you look at it, it's basically the thesis of the film. It's everything that the film is trying to say in one place, and it does it in such a specific way that, again, it's actually really fascinating to watch it.
Yeah.
Because you look at it and the things it's saying is not wrong. And I think that the action's great. What it does is great. Chor Yen as, the crime lord, he's so good. And, it's funny because after this, he and Jackie would work together again on a bunch of different movies.
Yeah.
Like he's in quite a few of his movies after this. So they clearly had like a very good relationship coming off of it, and I think that that's really cool. So, just something about that has always stood out. But that this sequence, it rips, man. There's a reason we talk about it. It just continues to be awesome. It continues to be heartbreaking. It continues to be thrilling. It continues to be everything you wanted this movie to be, and it gets there, and it just fucking rips.
Yeah,
there's no other way to say it.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. It's just that good.
Yeah, I only reason I said I didn't want to say basic before the reason I let it go for my film is I knew somebody else was going to have it on their list. I wanted to give more love.
I feel like saying this is like one of the best scenes in that movie is basically like saying But like when we're talking
Water is
about scenes, it comes up when you talk about like the greatest composers of all time. Like everyone knows. Well, I mean, at least Paul and I know we're gonna say John Williams. So it's like you just
Wait,
go
whoa,
with that.
whoa,
With I don't know,
whoa,
PJ.
whoa.
Who's your favorite?
You will too. Yeah, PJ.
PJ will too. I apologize, PJ.
What
I
the
apologize.
fuck is happening? Why all of a sudden, like, I'm getting thrown under the bus? Like, I'm not gonna love John Williams.
Why, PJ? You have some weird takes
Fuck.
sometimes.
Okay, we're gonna stop the fucking tape.
Weird
What the hell is
takes.
happening
We have some
here?
weird takes sometimes, PJ. We can't assume you're gonna make the right choice.
Just kidding. Sorry, PJ. My bad. But we all would say. I didn't want to speak for everybody, but I feel like you would say when you talk about the greatest composers of all time, you're going to have that conversation, like who your top 3 composers outside of John Williams.
She doesn't want to speak about you. She'll speak for me though, because she knows better. I guess that's the thing.
I'm hurt. I'm fucking hurt here, man. Like
All this in, Sean. All this is in, Sean.
I know I have my own hot takes, but like
that's not going to be one of them. Perfect. So let's rewind. We'll start this conversation.
No. It's out there now. You own this. You own all of this.
She didn't slide me. I don't care. Sean, edit if you want. I didn't get slighted.
No, Sean, you leave this in. This must stand.
You leave
I
this
need
slander
Exhibit A.
in.
Sean,
The slander will not stand. Like, if you had asked me outside of that, sure, absolutely. I would have absolutely gone for James Horner at that point.
Right.
No. Good Lord.
But anyway, back to the point that I was trying to make.
I'm sorry. You're right.
This is so off the rails.
This is so off the rails. Shocking. But when you're talking about this movie, I think that this is like the epitome to, when people think of a police story, they're thinking of that scene. Honestly, in my mind, I feel like they're thinking of that scene and like that first car chase bus scene. I think those are like the way that they bookend the movie with this insane action sequence here and then end it with like an even more insane action sequence. It blows my mind. I think it's incredible. So talking about it, it's like, what are your top? We all know that like this is going to be one, just like we all know that like when you talk about the greatest composer of all time, it's gonna be John Williams. And if you disagree, go fuck yourself. Yeah. But like PJ does apparently.
Well, PJ has some hot takes. We know that. So
we know that. Just
kidding.
Love you, PJ. They're not that hot. They're not that piping hot.
John Williams, there's no world where you don't put John Williams up there. The man has had more iconic film scores and themes than anyone who will ever live.
This is the epitome of the when you assume you make an ass of you and me. And I didn't want to assume. So I assumed wrong.
And yet you still managed to make an ass out of yourself. I don't know what we're talking about here. I mean, I love you, but goddamn, lady.
My bad. It's bad. Anyway, your next favorite scene, PJ, number 2.
A scene. It's funny, like you brought up the courtroom sequence, Paul.
Right.
But there's a scene in this movie that I think gets overlooked a lot, and it's a scene that I find really, really funny but also again very topical to how things are handled, and it is actually the scene involving Selena when they ask her to stay at the police precinct to talk to her privately without her lawyer. And then they all stand around outside or inside and they're not talking to her at all. And so she walks back out and the lawyer's like, "What did they say to you?" And she goes, "They didn't say anything." He goes, "But I'm your lawyer. You can trust me. You can tell me anything." And she's like, "No, they literally didn't say anything."
Right.
But the whole thing is them starting to like sow this discontent between her and the people that she works for. And I've always loved it because it's fairly comedic, but it's also like not wrong.
Right.
And kind of slimy and like the kind of thing that you're used to hearing them do, like planting evidence.
Right.
Yeah. I've been watching through for the first time The Wire on now Max.
Nice.
And it literally watching that scene reminded me of like I want to say it's like in the first episode of season 5 where they have the one kid and they start like they're doing these like trick things where like they take him to a copy machine and a printer and put his hand on it and treat it like a polygraph test. And the guy is just hitting the print button and it's coming out true and then false. So like they get to one question and it just prints out, says false. And like all of a sudden the kid's doing this whole like confession. It literally was like immediately what I thought of when I was watching that scene.
Yeah.
I love right before that sequence when Uncle Bill throws Jackie out. He's like,
Yeah.
"You're still here too? You got some of these?"
You guys,
Okay.
you got these?
I Dude, I love Uncle Bill.
Oh,
What
he
a
is in
great
every.
character and what a
Yeah.
great character actor. Like
Mhm.
every time you
Bill
look at Bill
Tong.
Tongue,
Oh
yeah.
God.
Oh, dude, Bill Tong is just the best. And every time it was funny because I was talking about this actually while I was watching Police Story, and I will never forget because I was talking to the person who had never seen the movie, and she, you know, has not seen most of his stuff. So I'm
Mm.
kind of like walking someone through the history of Jackie Chan while you're watching the movie.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Oh jeez.
It's like kind of a thing,
Yeah.
and where I was having fun with it, but I was like, I always remember very specifically the first time I watched Rumble in the Bronx, and they put that line in where he's like, "We're in America. We need to start speaking English now," and like they do it specifically so they can just dub the rest of the movie,
Yep.
Yeah.
which is such a hysterical thing. But what I've
Right.
always liked is they have always had the same person for the most part voice him.
Right.
So
Mhm.
if you've ever seen the Uncle Bill character or Bill Tongue in any one of Jackie's movies, for the most part in any of the American dubs, he sounds the same
Yep.
because they just kept getting the same actor across the movies
Right.
That's funny.
to voice him, which is very funny to me. But what a great actor he
Uh,
is.
what a great foil for Jackie too. They just have such a great. They work off each other very
Great
well.
chemistry. They
Yeah.
worked off
Yeah,
each other fantastically.
absolutely. Last favorite, number 3.
Honestly, it's really hard because there's so many great sequences in the movie. I'm gonna go with the like trying to spook Selena, leading to the fight where they've set her up to make her feel
Uh-huh.
like she needs to be protected, and she keeps hitting his friend over the head
With
with the yeah every
when
time, and she's
Jackie's,
like, "I'm
like, trying to
knocking
get him to, like,
out."
not wait, he's like, "Oh, no, he's still going." And I think
Yeah,
that was one of mine too, is
yeah.
that
See, hey, great minds. I'm
absolutely.
proud of
I
you.
fuck up one time, but never gonna do it again. Made up
Yeah.
for it.
Speaking of John
Um
Williams,
Um, but yeah, so like when I think that kind of harkens back to that idea of like how good Jackie's at with at physical comedy, because it's all his physical movements at the point where his friend is passed out to like try to make be like, oh no, we're still fighting. Ah, oh,
right.
ah. And he's like trying to get his friend to wake up. And then she comes over with that giant like stone lamp and he just goes, ah, he's out.
That's good stuff. I do like that quite a bit.
It was really good.
It's really good.
Um, And then I think for me, I mean, we had a couple of the scenes that I had, but one of my top ones was that we've talked about a little bit, but it's that whole entire bus action
Oh yeah.
sequence where he
Oh, yeah.
has the
I knew
umbrella
one
and
of
he's
us would probably say
like
it, so I'm glad you
it
did.
was, and I think part of it's just because of like the connection that I also have to it, like being able to like watch it, but not have like the appreciation when he's standing there with the revolver and they slam on the brakes and those guys go flying through the windows.
Yeah.
I hilarious and so good.
Well,
Is
and
Like
they've
it's
talked
so
about
good.
too, that was not really planned. They
Right.
were not supposed to fall out. Like,
right.
Right.
that's the thing that people don't realize. That's why that scene, like, you actually catch it. There's only a quick shot of them within the bus because they were not really recording for that.
Right.
They
Right.
were recording for him to stop, and when the bus stopped, they fell out, and that's why, like, you look, those guys are just lying there.
Yeah.
They
Right. They
don't
literally
like,
go through glass and fall on cement
Yes.
because they
yeah.
weren't supposed to go through the glass and fall on the cement.
Yeah, and because Chan's the director, you see him walk behind the bus very quickly, and you realize that's probably because he calls cut real fast to, like,
Right.
Check.
deal with
Yeah.
this.
Check it.
Make
Everybody
sure
okay?
his team is okay and not
Yeah,
dead.
How we doing? You
yeah,
know what?
like,
You know what's
that
funny about that? They're gonna say at least your director is Jackie Chan. You know he's been through what you just went through.
Yeah.
well, I mean, yeah, exactly, and he'd only almost died how many times to that
Uh-huh.
point already,
Exactly.
like but that scene is so wild, and I mean, what a great opening. This is a movie that, you look at it, the movie just opens.
Right.
You get
Yes.
very little information on the situation. There is a drug lord, and we are trying to stop him.
Right. And
You
here's all
don't
of
know
its
anything
people and
else.
this is who we're looking at and it just goes. And I think that is to its benefit. I think that's
I
you're
I
getting
agree.
you're getting a Jackie you no frills about it. You are getting a Hong Kong Jackie Chan action flick, and they just
Look,
throw it out to you, and it's perfect.
it's very honestly very Star Wars.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, to be completely honest, it's very Star Wars.
Right,
Without
trust me.
you don't need the opening crawl because you kind of do the opening crawl within this police precinct
Mhm.
thing, and then you just go
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
you just accept the thing you're doing, and that's kind of interesting actually. And
Yeah.
that's I think why it still works so well because you once you're locked in, dude, if you can strap in for the first 10 minutes, it's a wild ride.
Right.
Mm.
It really is. And you know you're in like watching these cars just driving down the side of a fucking mountain through
Well,
like shanty and like blowing like just going and it's practical. Like it's happening. It's
right,
not
and that's what to your point. That's why when I love when they get to the bottom of the hill, the cars are just mangled. And
yeah.
Right.
they don't try to change it out. Like those were the cars you were watching and they are trash.
Mhm.
They have shots from inside the camera where or from inside the cars where the glass is breaking and you see stuff going through the windshields. Like honestly, I am shocked no one died.
Yeah, me too.
Right?
Legitimately.
Honestly.
Like, yeah, we've heard much worse stories from actual Hollywood productions. So the
Mhm.
fact that no one died making this movie is wild to me.
Insane. It
Absolutely.
blows my mind that they're especially with everything that they were doing. It absolutely
I mean,
blows my mind.
it could have taken one of those cars flipping wrong, one
Mhm.
of those shanties falling wrong,
Mhm.
someone falling off one of those shanties,
Just a little wrong.
just hitting the ground wrong,
Mhm.
and yet no one died.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
seriously. I mean, I think Allison almost died earlier in this podcast.
I did. I did. Thank you, Paul.
Of embarrassment, I don't blame her.
I thought
You
PJ was
guys
going
are
to jump the
I
screen.
can't wait for you guys to come back for a police story too. Oh, look, and Kaiser's here. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. He is not. He is not. I have not sent the link.
Oh, you really worried me there for a second. I'm not gonna lie.
That would have been a great time for him to come up, though. Let's be honest.
That would have been perfect.
Love that
But
guy.
I do think this is now a good time to go into my Letterboxd app because we're still calling it
Ooh.
Letterboxd because that's what it is, and we haven't gotten a cease and desist because I don't have that many people listening. Uh, you know, we're gonna be honest.
Right.
But we're gonna, rate it out of 5 stars. And I mean, I'm not gonna embarrass myself out of this one. It's a 5. This is obviously a 5-star film. It has everything you want. It's done incredible. I see where so many things pull from this movie and films like this in this Hong Kong. And I really cannot wait to this and like I said, like Hard Boiled
Mhm.
and having previously watched that has really opened my eyes to a genre of film that I would never have sought out or appreciated until now. So I'm really excited to keep kind of continuing this dive into Hong Kong action and really into into Jackie Chan's filmography for sure.
Well, I'm very happy to hear that. I'm very happy to
Yeah,
hear
I
that.
am too, to be honest, because it's always a thing that I push if I can. Like I always want people to discover stuff outside of just American culture and
Mhm.
American cinema because it's very limiting not to try to see and enjoy stuff from around the world. And I mean, honestly, and this is to kind of tie the point home and also really like show a little bit of love for Ray Stevenson, but a lot of people aren't going if you haven't seen RRR, you're missing an
Mhm.
incredibly good villain performance from an actor you probably recognize in a movie that is in another country.
Right?
And now that he's gone, now is a perfect time if you have not seen it
Absolutely.
to go watch it, not just because the movie is great, but because his performance in it is so good.
Absolutely.
It's
Fucking
very good. I agree 100%. Well, before we sign off here, gentlemen, where can people find you guys? What do you have going on?
Oh, God.
Oh, you start. Yours is always longer than mine.
That's what
The
she
one
said.
time.
That's what she said. At Paul DiNuzzo on Twitter. Find me at-
You're a bitch.
you walked right into that.
That
Come
is
on.
also what she said.
Yeah, I know. I knew what I was doing, and then I anticipated you doing it, and
You're welcome.
You served it up. I appreciate
I'm
you.
trying to make
very
up for
much.
my slander. They're so bad right now.
Okay. Paul DiNuzzo on Twitter. You can find me on PLD Projects YouTube channel, where you find me with this guy doing two mediocre white dudes on film. I also do a weekly podcast called Holy Snokes with Matty Gunner, a Star Wars podcast. I do podcasts called Class Action with him and Jardy. I also do Crown Jewels, A Journey Through Queen, and Review, a podcast about V. And the Harris Dance will be coming out later this summer. But that's it.
Awesome. And PJ.
Twitter and Instagram, PJ_Campbell, hanging out with this moron, doing two mediocre white dudes on film at PLD Projects. You know, we have a lot of fun over there. So
We do.
come on back anytime.
Absolutely.
There we go. And of course, for all of you, thank you so much for watching and or listening. If you are watching us here on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, Flick and Reel, hit that little bell icon to get notifications, and leave your thoughts in the comments about your favorite Jackie Chan movies for sure. Also, be sure to give us that little hit that little thumbs up like button, really helps with the algorithm. If you're listening on your audio platform of choice, be sure to make sure you have subscribed, rated, and reviewed. You can follow the show on Twitter at Reels Like Movies, and you can follow me at Allison Salamone. And until next time, my friends, be safe. I'm going to go watch some more movies.
Yeah. Police Story 2, let's do it.